Trails from Zero, or Zero no Kiseki, begins a duology of games often referred to as the Crossbell arc of the Trails series. This shifts the focus from the group of rural, countryside areas featured throughout the Trails in the Sky arc to a group of young police officers protecting the modern city of Crossbell while fighting for their freedom. Crossbell City really is a city within the province of Crossbell that has adopted top-of-the-line modern technology in their everyday lives. Crossbell is located between Liberal, the kingdom lived in and explored throughout the entirety of the Sky arc, and Erebonia, and as a result has become a melting pot, which is reflected in its soundtrack. Every single song in the soundtrack is a full reflection of the citizens and the diverse environments of the Crossbell province. I haven't heard a soundtrack as distinct as this one in a very long time. Whenever I hear a standalone track from this soundtrack, I can immediately visualize the area and specific characters and scenes that accompany it. Trails from Zero's soundtrack represents the shift in environment between arcs along with the personal themes of each of the game's central party members, who are a part of a police section called the SSS, or the Special Support Section. There were 2 new composers and arrangers added to the team for this arc, with the most prominent being Saki Momiyama. I'd argue that Momiyama has some of the most diverse production styles out of any of the composers listed, and she easily jumps between faster contemporary production to slower orchestral tracks throughout the soundtracks. She easily has some of my favorite production throughout the series, next to Ishibashi. Falcom and its community do a great job of crediting its composers, artists, and arrangers, so if there's a specific track you like, I'd encourage you to look into the composer's other work. Also, before we begin, there will be a playlist of all the songs that I list in this video, as well as other recommendations that I have, so definitely check that out as well. Scene of a Street Corner is one of the first songs the player hears in Trails from Zero, and also serves as the main theme of Crossbell City. Throughout the arc, the theme of Crossbell City changes to reflect the emotions of the citizens, so this track is very upbeat and energetic as a result. The digital synth keys at the start of the track sound more modern to reflect the setting of Crossbell City. Afternoon in Crossbell plays as you explore Crossbell City in the afternoon. This track embodies the feeling of going home and relaxing after a long day of work or school. Once again, the synths represent the technological background of the city, which was rarely presented throughout the Sky arc. The Geofront is a location that is quite literally central to the plot of the game, as well as the location of Crossbell City. The 4-on-the-floor drum pattern and claps throughout this song give this track a more house feel, which aligns it with contemporary electronic music. The choice of having tighter, more quantized production gives Crossbell City a more distinct, modern feel, especially coming from the countryside setting of Liberal. Lemonade in Hand is a drastic departure from the instrumentation of the music throughout Crossbell City, and I think that this duology in production is exactly why Momiyama is such a great producer. The song, starting with the wind instrument, immediately pulls the listener out of the city and into the wilderness and sense of adventure that the highway brings. The keys and guitar give me a feeling of nostalgia, as if I were listening to an old favorite even during my first time listening to this track. As I said earlier, Crossbell City can be quite busy for the SSS when compared to the locations in the Sky arc. With the party being a group that patrols in Crossbell, there is rarely any time for rest. Luckily, the mining village of Mains isn't as developed or populated as the city, and as a result is more laid back by nature. This allows the party a rare chance to rest due to the stark change of pace that this location brings, which this track reflects beautifully. Throughout the game, the SSS fights and inevitably struggles, oftentimes towards a devastating loss. This theme reminds me of the times where the SSS allow themselves to sit down and reflect on those losses, and I feel like it reflects the SSS's individual struggles as well. That's hard to say, SSS's. SSS's. Someday Surely, especially the super arranged version of this track, is probably the best song in the entire series. I've said that for multiple tracks, but I can definitely say this is top 3. Someday Surely represents the hope that the SSS and Crossbell as a province carry for their own personal futures. Get Over the Barrier is the main battle theme of Trails from Zero. Where most of the songs I've covered have been about the future hopes, present struggles, and longing for freedom, Get Over the Barrier represents taking action towards one's own freedom. The song represents the party's resilience in the face of adversity and the fight towards their freedom throughout the Crossbell duology. Inevitable Struggle is the second battle theme for Trails from Zero, and this song represents the exact same thing as Get Over the Barrier, but amplified 100 times, maybe even 1,000, maybe 3,000, something like that. This track is a banger. The Wind from Liberal is a rendition of Feeling Sore with the Wind, which is Estelle's theme, who's the protagonist of Trails in the Sky. With the series so dependent on progressing characters across its arcs, it's important to have distinct themes attached to each character and arc to make callbacks to. The first time I heard this song, I definitely jumped out of my seat. Similar to the themes expressed in the tracks Inevitable Struggle and Get Over the Barrier, Trails to Azure is a game about people taking action to defend and reclaim their personal freedom as well as their homeland's freedom. Just like Trails in the Sky SC, there's a stark change in tone in this game due to the rising political tensions throughout Crossbell. Aoki Shizuku is the main menu theme of Ao no Kiseki, and I get chills every time I hear this song. I think that this track fully represents the story of Crossbell and its systems throughout the saga, as well as Shizuku's story throughout the arc as well. A Barrier to Get Over uses the leitmotif from Trails from Zero's battle theme, Get Over the Barrier. This is a more somber interpretation of the track, which represents the tonal shift from Trails from Zero to Trails to Azure. The theme that previously represented action has turned into a somber theme of defeat. Similar to the track Lemonade in Hand, this field theme is a drastic departure from the modern production of Crossbell City. This track left a great first impression on me, and the first time I heard this track, I put my controller down and just listened to it on loop. Miss You is one of the tracks that play during the many emotional payoff scenes throughout this game, and I also think that this serves as Kia's theme because it really reflects her bright personality. From a production standpoint, this track also has that 4 on the floor kick pattern similar to a house track, which again gives the track a more modern feel that Crossbell embodies. Omen of Disaster brings back the otherworldly sounds of the Trails in the third soundtrack to match the events of the story. The clock ticking throughout the track serves as a metronome to keep the tempo of the song and also plays into the tone of the game. The actions of the SSS and Crossbell as a whole are highly time sensitive throughout this game, and the track reflects that almost literally. I love when songs leave the metronome in or use a clock ticking effect, so I really appreciated this track. Strange Feel embodies the feeling of somebody who stumbled upon something that they weren't supposed to see, which is exactly what the SSS does throughout this game. The strings on this track are nasty, like I do a nasty stank face every time I hear this song. Demon's Yell is a song that feels really sinister but calm at the same time, which I think is a really difficult tone to execute, and I really haven't heard a song like this ever. Mystic-Core is definitely a banger, but once again, the song sounds very modern to reflect Crossbell's technological advancements, because this track is literally just a trance track, similar to like Darude Sandstorm. You could easily play this in a club and no one would think twice about it. Dark Throne and Delusion of 1,000 Years play when Mariabelle makes her big revelation at the end of the game. This track isn't really similar to anything else in the soundtrack, which makes the reveal hit a lot harder since it's such a huge tonal juxtaposition. Feeling is a Place to Arrive At is a callback to the Trails to Third ending song Cry For Me, Cry For You, which is one of my favorite songs if you watched the last video. This track plays during a scene relating to Ren, who is probably the most important character throughout the entire series, and I jumped out of my seat the first time I heard this song. Unfathomed Forest. Don't need to say nothing about it. You already know this is one of the hardest JRPG battle tracks of all time. Arianrod's theme reflects her elegant and powerful nature and serves as one of the most memorable boss themes in recent memory for me. I'm a sucker for piano ending themes, and True Bonds completely delivered. Like the title suggests, True Bonds plays during the climax of the game and reflects the bonds that the SSS and the citizens of Crossbell has built throughout the game. And yet here we are plays during the final scene of the game, where it's revealed what happened after the ending of the game. This scene is a punch in the gut because we find out that Crossbell and the SSS only won a small battle in a much larger war. The jumps between dynamics and swells throughout the track feel like a representation of Crossbell's efforts in gaining their freedom. The track ranges from being dead silent to only having one instrument to having a whole orchestra and a choir within seconds. This track ends with a huge build-up that ends with a piano solo that doesn't really feel like it resolves itself, which is how the player is supposed to feel by the end of this game. When I look back at the Crossbell arc, the first thing I always remember, even before some of the key scenes throughout these games, is definitely the music. This arc has some of the strongest tracks in the entire series, and revisiting them in the context of the game has only made me appreciate it more. And with that being said, it's time to leave Crossbell and move on to the Empire of Erebonia with the Trails of Cold Steel arc and its music.